Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I am Paul John Dykes. I am currently on my lonesome, but I will be joined in about 15 minutes or so, maybe a wee bit earlier, by the usual Wednesday lineup of John Hughes and Patrick McGill. We are all obviously watching the game. We're going to have a wee watch along for the last 15 minutes or so. Celtic just made a raft of substitutions, which can work two ways. Does it give us a wee bit more impetus near the end of this game? The guys were obviously tired. They're playing in really hot conditions there. And I know that they've had their Portuguese summer camp, the warm weather camp that they call it. But yeah, we're still trying to get to grips with the fitness. And Yokohama F. Marinos are way ahead in that particular area. But it has been a very entertaining game. I think the frustration has been the fact that we've got an issue really at the back, haven't we? We've had an issue at the back, and that has been what's caused us 4 goals conceded, unfortunately, today. And we could go through them, and we will once the rest of the troops join me. But the reason we're going at 12:30 is because we always go at 12:30. That's what time we go at. So we weren't going to change that. And we will use this also as our post-match as well as the normal bulletin. What are the talking points so far? I think the performances in the first half, obviously, Maeda through the middle, and at half-time, Jared, myself and Jerry were talking about the fact that we've been talking around what we need in the squad, what we need to strengthen it, and part of that has been our third striker, and then Maeda comes in and shows us exactly what he can do through the middle. I then asked the question, why didn't we deploy him through the middle more often? I know that Kyogo has been on tremendous form, and last season he didn't have the kind of injury woes that he had the season before, so where are the opportunities? But when you see his performance in that first half, he was outstanding in the first half, and that has given us an option that Liam Carrigan, to be fair to him, has been telling us about for long enough. It looks as though there might be a water break at the moment. What are your thoughts? What's your thoughts so far as Celtic trail 4-3? Let's get your thoughts coming in. Like myself, you're all watching this on Celtic TV or any other stream that you're able to get your eyes on. We can see on the bench there some of the first half performers, some good, some bad, and some indifferent, I've got to say. When you look at the mistakes that we have made for the 4 goals, Joe Hart, it's an individual error. You've got Greg Taylor. His positioning's wrong. You've got to see his positioning is wrong. The boy has ghosted him behind him. You've got Carl Starfelt, unfortunately, again, in the second half as well. Starfelt slow to come out, and the midfielder's run wasn't tracked from our own midfield. So a couple of things wrong there. Maybe that was a tiredness playing its part, because straight after that 4th goal has gone in, Brendan Rodgers has made the changes, the raft of changes that we will see from the likes of Kyogo up top. Stephen Welsh has replaced Kobayashi at the back. Unfortunately, it looks as though Kobayashi's got an injury the way he landed. Big O's on now. We've got Ben Summers on the park as well. So it'll be interesting from that perspective to see how they perform. I think the first half was all about looking at how Brendan shaped up. We've seen the lineup and some of the questions around where's Awata playing, where's Haksabanovic playing. And I think that both those 2 players had mixed fortunes, I would say, in the first 65 minutes of this game before Haksabanovic came off. I thought Awata played pretty well, actually, at right back. And we're going to say he's playing out of position. It's certainly not his favoured position. But as I was saying at the beginning of the game, the big Yogi, he did play there a number of times over in Japan for this very side, in actual fact. So, he did look comfortable. I did think he looked comfortable. My big concern was when it gets to the point where we're on the offensive and he's on the overlap. But, after the first attack, I think that he looked pretty comfortable. He started linking play up really well. There was some interchanging between himself and the midfield as well. You could see him coming in more inverted, as we were used to last season, not necessarily him individually. But yeah, the performance of Haksabanovic and Awata, I thought Awata done really well. Haksabanovic, again, was pretty quiet. We've yet to see the best of him. We keep saying it. There needs to come a point where we see it from Haksabanovic. I'm not convinced he's a winger. Will we be playing with a number 10 we have the luxury of playing with a number 10. Brendan Rodgers liked to play with a 10. Last time round, it was Tommy Rogic to great effect, and obviously continued that when he was at Leicester. Just watching the game as we were breaking away, and the ref seems to play advantage, but it's getting pulled back now, hopefully for a free kick. And 4-3, I don't think Celtic are out of this game yet. It's been a high-scoring game. We're going to look at the goals as being soft. We're looking at, from a Celtic perspective, soft goals to lose. But some of our passages of play, in the attack have been phenomenal. A lot of that has come through the orchestration of Hatate, who has just reminded us how important he is in the Celtic side. Since the big contracts have gone out to the likes of Maeda, Kyogo, McGregor, we've been asking on the podcast over the last week or so, who's next? Because we want to see that kind of thing happening. I would guess with Carter Vickers, with O'Reilly, with Hatate, maybe even Abada. These are the players that are going to garner interest from some of the bigger leagues all around Europe, and we want to make sure that we can protect our asset, and actually not just protect our asset, keep them at the club. I don't want to protect my assets so I get a bigger fee now. I think we are in a situation where we need to keep all the top players. We've already lost one in Jota, and I think Abada today has come through out of rather the shadow of Jota, and he's performed really well today, has Lil Abada. Sometimes I think we take him for granted because of the age of him. He came in, he hit the ground running, he scored that first goal against Midtjylland in the qualifier when Ange first took over, and his goals and assist rate in both his first and second season have been brilliant. His figures do tally up, but he's not really been a first pick last season. So I think with the departure of Jota, there's an opportunity opened up there for Lil Abada to really come into his own. And I think from the first half performance, it looks as though he is up for that challenge and to that challenge. His performance was excellent. So I'm trying to keep an eye on the game as well as bringing up your comments. So apologies that I've not brought up any yet, just as our opponents are on the attack. And thankfully it's gone high and Siegrist is able to come out and collect the ball. Let's start with the goalie then. Joe Hart has been the subject of quite a bit of discussion, not just during this pre-season, but last season as well. And we were asking the question, well, do we need a new goalkeeper? I think that undoubtedly we do. In any case, we've lost two goalies. And I think that we need to bring in another one to challenge Joe Hart. The suggestion by Jared was that we could bring someone in who would basically learn under him for a season, which I can totally understand with the experience that Joe Hart has, both internationally and on a Champions League stage, not just with Celtic, but with Man City as well. And yeah, a young player coming in could learn a hell of a lot from Joe Hart. But I just think that there was another wee reminder there in the first half that when you want everything to be tight at the back, you want to lock that door, there are some people that you think to yourself, it's a heart and mouth moment, pardon the pun, it really is, and often the player that causes that is Joe Hart himself, and he'd done it again. Yeah, he made a couple of good saves. I think it was interesting that there was only one change at half-time, and that one change was to get Siegrist on the park. I remember when we signed him, he was definitely that player in Scottish football, outside of Celtic and Rangers. There's always a player or two who you think is the best player in the league outside of us two. And he was that player. You think if you would have signed a player, you'd have brought in Siegrist. And I think the plan last season was that he would be playing the League Cup games, played the first two, then got injured. And when he was fit, because I think he was fit from January time, he didn't actually play because he had other personal issues. And, he never played another League Cup game either. So 2 games in his first season. And I think that, the time is now. Is he going to be part of the squad? You put him in for games like this. You give him half the game and you really test him. And Brendan Rodgers will have an idea in his mind what type of goalkeeper he's going to have at Celtic. First time round, you'll remember, he inherited Craig Gordon. He had his own idea about who should be playing in goals, and it was Doris de Vries that came in, didn't work out. So I think that just the Celtic lineup to take a free kick, in actual fact, it looks like it's O who won the free kick, who fancies taking it himself. He likes the whole, the Ronaldo thing when he lines up to take it and all this, and here he is, and it would be brilliant to see if he could actually dink that in. I found it interesting that Nakamura was getting interviewed during the week, obviously because he was part of the kind of media, the media coverage of this particular game and Celtic being in Japan to play a couple of games. And he was talking about, the fact that he regrets it's only the free kicks he's remembered for, the 2 free kicks that he scores against Manchester United, phenomenal. And there's always these doubts by some, maybe not by him, but by some, that that was it didn't prove that he was Champions League level. It was just the 2 free kicks. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that. I think Nakamura was a quite phenomenal player, quite a unique player at the time for Celtic. And obviously out with Champions League level, we've done some fantastic things on a domestic stage as well. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's something that, certainly not something I had considered, and it's maybe something that he had read himself in the media, that he wasn't, maybe renowned for taking a Champions League game by the scruff of the neck and winning it and being a game changer. How else could you be a game changer than scoring those free kicks, one at home and one away, both against Manchester United? Unbelievable technique. I don't think I've seen technique like it, actually, from a Celtic player in my lifetime. Someone that could take a free kick quite like Nakamura could. And you also saw that against Kilmarnock. And then in terms of technique and open play, that goal against Rangers is one that I could watch time and time again. Gary Caldwell, I'm sure, claims that was a pass, not just a mishit clearance that landed at the feet of Nakamura. So here we are. We've got 12 minutes to go in this game. How do you think it's gone? Are you concerned at the first half performance of the defence? Or do we put it down to the fact that it was an unfamiliar lineup? You've got Greg Taylor and Joe Hart with Carol Starfelt. There's all your experience in terms of Celtic experience. We've introduced Iwata playing right back and Kobayashi, who had a bit of a tough time of it last season at the end of the campaign. So can we put it down to that? They're unfamiliar. Mistakes will be made. But what it has done is it's resulted in an injury. I don't know how serious that is for Kobayashi yet. An injury to Kobayashi in the introduction of Stephen Welsh to the action. And Stephen Welsh is actually one of the 10 players that I named in my blog that I published last night, Acsom.net. Get it checked out. Check it on a daily basis. There's new content going up there regularly now. And Stephen Welsh is one of those players that, as much as I've championed him since he came into the team, I think it probably is time for him to move on. A big part of that will be, whether or not Brendan Rodgers is impressed with Kobayashi in these games. And obviously this has given Stephen Welsh an opportunity, perhaps, because there has been interest. There's been interest from Hellas Verona. There's been interest from Toulouse and Udinese in the past. He's a player that's obviously appearing on the radars of these big clubs who might want to take him elsewhere. And I think that at this stage of his career, whether or not he's one of the players who have had that word in his ear from Brendan, and Brendan's spoken about that, there are players in the squad that he's told, you're not part of my plans and we will move you on, then, this is maybe an opportunity for him either to play his football elsewhere. He might look at some of his countrymen like Lewis Ferguson, Josh Doig, Aaron Hickey, and others who have gone over to Italy. And I know that obviously Hickey has then come back to Brentford in the EPL, but it just shows you that there are a lot of talented young Scottish players. Liam Henderson was maybe one of the kind of groundbreakers in that. Is that a penalty for Celtic? O has gone down. I would like to have another look at that. It was a great move actually down the right-hand side. Jamesy Forrest picked it up. And it was a good ball by Forrest. He plays O in, and O was bundled to the deck. I would like to see that in slow motion. What do you make of that Celtic strip? I have gone on and on and on about it. I've berated it. I've berated the designers for it. And I'm not going back. I'm not backtracking. But what I will say is it doesn't look as bad on, if you know what I mean, in action on the player when you're watching the games. My eyesight's dreadful anyway, so when I'm obviously watching it from the stands, it will probably just be a blur of green and white, and it wouldn't matter what the hoops look like at that stage. But when I see it close up, I'm still not a fan. I'm not going to labour that as Celtic are in possession. 9 minutes on the clock. Can we pull this back to 4 each? I would like to do that. It's a friendly game, and I don't like to get beat when it comes to Celtic in any match, at any level, be that the men's team, the women's team, a friendly game, a Champions League qualifier. I want to win the whole lot. And I will be jumping back and forward. I don't want to miss any of the action, which is why I've not brought up any of your comments yet. But keep them coming in. I'm going to be posing a few questions. You answer them for me, and I'll bring up as many of those answers as I possibly can, probably when John and Paddy joins me after this game. And the invites are out to the boys. They're enjoying the game, and they will join me ASAP, just probably before the full-time whistle, in actual fact. So there we go. And Celtic, for me, have shown enough that we are still an attacking force. Of course we are. That doesn't change overnight. But we've looked a wee bit shady at the back. And I think it's something that we were already aware of. We've got injuries to Cameron and Carter Vickers, to Alistair Johnson, Anthony Ralston, and now to Kobayashi, although we don't know how serious that's going to be for Kobayashi. Hopefully not under the circumstances. A lot of the players that we are linked to have been more offensive players, but I definitely think we need to strengthen at the back. How's Bernabe played in the pre-season? Well, it's hard to tell, isn't it? Because we never got the two Portmanense games. We only got the unique angle goals footage from Celtic TV, which I love, by the way. I think the unique angle is brilliant. It's such a simple concept which works really well. You look forward to seeing it. And I think Bernabe was part of at least one of the goals where there was a ball played with the outside of the boot, which opened up the defence and it created a bit of space for us. And I think that he looked okay in that passage of play, but obviously he's coming on now for probably 20 to 25 minutes of this game. I'm not convinced defensively in Bernabe yet. I've seen a wee bit. I've seen flashes of him going forward, but I'm not sure yet if he is the answer. Now, the boys are going to join me. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Everybody's seen the big screen version of PJD. John, Paddy, sorry the invite came out late. I was juggling a wee bit there, and I've been talking for 15 minutes. Are you going to help me out?
Nothing to say, actually. Is there something happening?
I'm keeping an eye on the game. I'm trying to keep an eye on the game. Welcome to the show, John Hughes and Patrick McGill. Patrick, fresh from a couple of weeks away because he's entitled to his holidays. Of course he is. And Big John joined me for the pre-match as well. John, how's it going?
Can I just say, Patrick, bringing his normal luck to this situation as we lose a fifth goal. Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, Paddy.
Great to see you.
Cheers, Paddy. I wish it was as simple as that, John. I'm a bit concerned at the lacklustre nature of all 5 goals, to be honest. They've been very, very soft goals, haven't they?
Oh, unbelievable. Like, Yokohama did nothing for them. So, no, I actually missed the fourth one because I was trying to get in on here and I missed the fourth, but I got a couple of messages. I take it Starfelt got sent off and something. I got a couple of messages suggesting the Starfelt may share origins with Kermit the Frog. And we're better down to 10 men.
Well, the thing with the big fella that I was saying at the beginning of the game, John, was he's the boy, along with, he had to be a leader. That's what we're saying at the beginning of the game. He needs to be a leader. Joe Hart needs to be a leader. Greg Taylor's got all the experience. And you've got 2 guys who have got, they've got plenty of experience, but not within that Celtic defence, they don't. Kobayashi's not played a lot of games. And the games that he did play, he was berated. He was dropped. He was unceremoniously dropped and he didn't make the Scottish Cup final. You've got Awata playing it right back. So you're looking at these guys to be strong and to be leaders. By the way, I know it's a friendly. I'm not going to go in studs up or anything, Patrick, but it is disappointing to see that the experienced guys are the ones that have been making the mistakes today.
Yeah, it's quite strange because, Starfelt, he wins, as our defensive partnership goes, he's the one that wins the headers. He's in the air quite a bit. He's a lot older than Carter Vickers. I think he's 28 or 29, very physical player. But I think it was Gary Neville that spoke a few years ago about Man City. You need a sort of big brother, and Carter Vickers is definitely the big brother. Virgil van Dijk was the big brother to Denier. Yeah. And I think Carter Vickers needs that. Starfelt needs a guy like Carter Vickers beside him, because when he's on his own, the defence struggles. Starfelt. Welsh and Kobayashi just aren't at the level, and then Starfelt struggles when he's not got that big brother beside him. So the defence really does come down quite a few notches when Carter Vickers is out of the team, and it's disappointing. But I think that's just how Starfelt is. I can't see that changing because he's been with us for 2 years, professional footballer for 10. So I think it's just something we're going to have to learn to deal with.
He's at that age, isn't he? He's in a different category of player than someone from a different position. But Hatate, I was talking about his development and his progression year on year. You've seen it. it's been pretty obvious how he's improved, from that fella who was at the press conference in the January with the other two Japanese signings at the time, and what he has gone on to become as a player who will be on the radar of many, many big clubs all over Europe and beyond. John, I will not be surprised if we get big money bids for him. I hope we're able to withstand them, because Hatate, even today, and I know it's a bounce game, but Hatate has been different level today.
Hatate was tremendous. And as you say, different level. His vision's just unbelievable. And that goal, whose goal was it? The beautiful one, I think it was Maeda's second, third. He wins the ball in midfield. Brilliantly holds off his man, turns, gives it to McGregor to Abada, and then Abada to Maeda. But he's got strength, he's got vision, he's got unbelievable range of passing. He is just phenomenal. So him and Maeda were the two standouts today, no question. I think this game's basically over as a competition at this point.
Nine goals.
Yeah.
You know what I'm thinking, John? I'm thinking of that famous cup final when we played Hibs. Dixie Dean scored a hat-trick. We beat Hibs 6-3. Who was the Hibs player? Was it Harper? Scored a hat-trick and was on the losing side. Maeda's going to be that boy tonight. Who was that Hibs player? Somebody in the comments will be able to tell me. I'm going to say it was Harper. He scores a hat-trick and Celtic beat them 6-3, and he's a hat-trick in a cup final when he's getting hammered. Maeda will be feeling a wee bit like that tonight. Listen, there's a wee bit of this. We've obviously gone way off the boil since we've made these substitutions. It's not looked as competitive. And again, that tells its own story. We're all at sea at the back. When you see your defence facing your own goal and your opposition's on the attack, that's when you know you're in trouble, Patrick. And that's really been the state of play for the last 15, 20 minutes here.
Yeah, it's went downhill rather quickly in the second half. Obviously, we're making a lot of changes. It's our sort of first, I was going to say competitive game, but first sort of proper friendly. You had the two bounce games against Portimonense, but we're still getting into the swing of things. And I was watching just before I came in. You don't like to lose any sort of game, whether it be a friendly, qualifier, league game, women's game, under 18s game. You want to see Celtic win, and obviously you're not as passionate about friendly games, but when it becomes 6-3, someone saying in the comments it's 6-4. I don't know how true that is, but not cause for concern by any means, but it's not ideal. I mean, if you look at it, you could look at it one way and say, we lost 6-2 to West Ham 2 years ago and had a pretty good season, so we're actually getting better.
That's the game that was coming to my mind, Patrick, because I remember watching that game and thinking the ball was burst. I remember watching that game and thinking we were done. And I'm not feeling like that today. Whether or not we scored the fourth goal, obviously, we're all watching this at different times. Somebody just scored, right?
John. Turnbull, absolute peach. What a peach that was.
Right, that's interesting.
Smashed it at the back of the net.
That's interesting, right?
That's about a 30-yard screamer there.
So if had 10 goals, this is like WWF, man. This is a different game of football entirely. Right, I'm just getting the goal now, so let's have a look. It's a clearance, and it's quite. Surely he doesn't score for this distance.
He does.
91 minutes.
He bends it like not like Beckham, but
he bends like a Bratback. Patrick's thinking along the same lines as me. We're watching this supposedly live on Celtic TV, but I think everybody's got different times, different time zones and everything else. But I'll tell you something, John, and it's something that we will talk about post-match. I have been talking about some of the comments that Brennan made around trimming the squad. And I had a look at the squad, the size of it, the bloated nature of it. And one of the names that was on my list of players that was to leave the club was the guy that's just scored the goal. And I'm just seeing it now, and it was tremendous because that is what David Turnbull does. That is the type of thing that he can do, and he has done since he came to the club. Patrick, I'm going to throw this one to yourself. We're going to open up with David Turnbull because it's the latest bit of action that I certainly have seen. He's on my list of players who will leave the building this pre-season. Do you agree or disagree, and why?
towards the end of last season, I thought he was, sure to go. He was so far down the pecking order in that midfield three. Obviously, McGregor, it always starts when he's fit. Hatate almost always starts when he's fit. So there's only really one place, and Matt O'Reilly and Aaron Moy were fighting out last season, and you sort of struggled to see where Turnbull fit into the team because he's not the quickest, he's not the most athletic, and he struggled with Ange's system really. Despite the 6 month start where he played every single game or started every single game, he struggled to fit into the system. But now that Ange's actually left and we've got Rodgers and there's not as much running, not as much pressing, certainly I'm sure that will still be there, but there's a lot more cute passing in Rodgers' system, and he's a fantastic footballer with the ball at his feet. So with the change in manager in mind, I could possibly see him sticking around. Not a guarantee. I thought he was certain to leave if Ange was to stay, but now that everything's sort of up in the air, I think he could stay if he's had a chat with Brendan and Brendan sees him and his plans. Then I think he could get another season out of him, maybe.
It's funny how what a game of football can change things, John. And by the way, I'm not changing my mind on the Celtic strip, and I'm not yet changing my mind on David Turnbull. He was part of a blog that was on the site last night. He was one name of 10. John, we'd all disagree. If I got you to write 10 names, it'd be different from mine. They'd be different from Patrick's. In fact, it's something we might do next week. But he was one of the players, but he's just reminded us again of what he can do. Last season was a disappointing one on a personal level for him, game time wise. But yeah, you do have that with Brendan Rodgers. You've got that ability for him to revitalise a player. Do you think Turnbull is that player?
Yeah, quite possibly. But we actually, I don't think we did disagree, because a few weeks ago we went through that squad and it was stay, go or meh.
That's right.
I think we were all. And I can't remember what it was. I can't remember when it was stay, go or meh, but I don't remember disagreeing on it. Look, I mean, we even discussed it last week. As I said before, I have a real issue with losing Turnbull just as much as he's clearly a tremendous talent. And if he's not good for us, he's going to be absolutely brilliant for someone else. So I think it's more to do with, as Patrick said, it's going to be a change in style, potentially a less manic way of playing. And he is a more studied player, but he's technically tremendously gifted. He gives you goals from midfield, as he's just proved there. He's got a fantastic range of passing. When he was dropping deep there, you could see him once Hatate's off taking over the role that Hatate had, of spraying the ball around, and trying to dictate the play. So, could he be revitalised? He definitely could be, but the problem is going to, if it's true, as we've been told it is, that we're looking for two pretty high-level midfielders, then you'll have to go. But the other thing we said next week is, I mean, these are all the games he's got. So if he doesn't impress now, he either has to sign a new contract or he's gone, because we'll have to get rid of him. It's not a matter of where we want to keep him. We'll have to get rid of him, because we need to make some money. So you can't let him run down his contract. That's just not acceptable. So we need to, a decision needs to be made one way or another. But I think the thing that we've learned tonight is, again, our problems lie elsewhere than the midfield.
Absolutely.
So, if you look at I was just writing that down there. If you look, pretty much everybody said goalkeeper, left back, centre back in terms of who you wanted to bring in. They were sort of three of the four, and that's so the goalkeeper gave away a goal, centre back gave away a goal, left back gave away a goal. So did we learn anything we didn't know?
You're right, John. You're
right. Because those were three of the four that we sort of said as well.
Absolutely.
So,
the thing with Starfield,
the
thing with Starfield, John, he was absolutely to blame because he's lost possession for his first indiscretion. But you could also levy some blame at him for the fact that he's the guy in defence that should be leading that defence out, And the commentary team, Peter Grant said they came out in dribs and drabs. They did. When you watch it, very hesitant. You need to get it out. You need to clear your lines. It's like a basic part of playing a kind of high, a higher line. You're getting pinned back if you don't do that. And albeit the midfielder, the run wasn't tracked, and that's something you've got to look at. The first issue was the fact that Starfelt didn't have his defence out, and he's the man that should be organising it. So you're dead right. He's a player that we have identified. And I'm thinking, I was going back to the last Champions League campaign under Brendan 4 years ago, right? And it was one of the campaigns the one that got away. You remember the Boyata saga and everything else that happened there, and we were very slow to get players in time. It was almost, we used to do this thing where we'll just see if we can get through that qualifier with what we've got, and then we might strengthen it. And we tried to do that to a degree, and we'd already sold Stuart Armstrong. We were later to sell Dembele, but who we eventually brought in was big Filip Benkovic. Now, by the way, I'm at no point suggesting that we go and get him. A player like that, a big imposing centre half of a player. Now, Benkovic came in, and until his injury, Patrick, you'll remember this, I think you were going to away ties and everything in Europe at this point. Benkovic was a player that we were considering purchasing, and had we purchased him at that time, we would have probably broken a transfer record. That's how highly he was valued. I think Leicester had signed him for 12 or 14 million quid from Croatia Zagreb, I believe. I'd need to check the team he played for in Croatia. And he was a very high-rated player. It turns out his knees were made of China, and he couldn't go into a tackle. He was always injured. He's barely kicked a ball, actually, since leaving Celtic. But that's the type of player I think we need to partner Carter Vickers. We need a leader. We need somebody who's strong, physical, but also can play out from the back, because Benkovic had all of that, didn't he?
Yeah, he was a phenomenal player, and it's quite sad that we only managed to get about 4 months out of him. He came in, I think it was like the last hour of the window. Comes in, I think it was Rosenborg, or maybe it was one of his first games, and he's the standout centre half until Christmas. We end up going to Ibrox, and I think he comes off after about half an hour and never plays for Celtic again. Lenny obviously came in late February that season and didn't really play any loan players. He was sort of more focusing on who he would have the following season. So it was a combination of injury and managerial change. But Benkovic was a phenomenal player, and you're right. The 4 months that he was playing, we were talking about. We really should be signing this guy, because this guy's immense. It was a bit like Carter Vickers, just over a season ago, where everyone was in agreement. The guy's too good not to sign. So I think you're right. I think we do need a guy like that, and threat from a goal as well. Benkovic, which I think Starfelt scored 2 last season. Very, very tall player. Gets to a lot of defensive headers, but seems to struggle at the other end of the pitch. He actually gets his head in a lot of balls, but struggles to find the net. So I think obviously today has shown, and the last couple of seasons have shown, in an ideal world, you get a ball playing left-footed centre half who's really tall, really quick, and really strong. Obviously, the level we operate at, you can't really get them. So you need to sort of try and make do with what you've got. So, if we get another Carter Vickers or someone of that ilk, I'd be more than happy. And I think, if the rumours are true, we're going to spend tens of millions, and Brendan's here to lead us to European glory. I think it's the sort of signing that we probably need to be making.
Yeah, and this is the thing, John, because we've gone into the game and we spoke about it before, so it's not as with hindsight, and we knew that defence was pretty fractured, so we do need to strengthen. There's no doubt about it. But what I wanted to do, prior to the absolute disaster that became there, losing 6 goals when we were 3-2 up, we ended up being 6-3 down, and we've pulled a consolation back. I wanted to talk about the Iwata performance and Kobayashi's performance, John, because, particularly Kobayashi's a player that I think a lot of people had already written off because of the issues particularly against Rangers last season that we spoke about. The fact that we don't know if he's got the physical attributes that you might need, or you definitely do need, not only to survive in Scotland, but certainly at the top level. He looked a bit lightweight for a guy he's got the stature, but he just looks a bit lightweight. I thought he was doing okay today until he got injured. I thought he fitted in pretty comfortably under the circumstances, as did Iwata. But they do look like backups, don't they?
Yeah, well, not to put too fine a point on it, but Kobayashi, yeah, he did look okay, but these games, if he doesn't look okay in these games, he might as well pack his bags, because these are not games that are going to test him, not for his weaknesses. So this isn't where he is going to be exposed. He's going to be exposed against bigger, more aggressive, more direct players, which he has been. So we need to see that he's worked on that. That's what we need to see. These games should be a canter for him. This is perfectly suited to his style of playing football. So I don't think we really learned anything from that. I think Iwata was okay to an extent. He certainly looks like someone who hasn't been playing fullback, and every time he got forward, which he did, I mean, he ran hard, and he put a shift in, and he was trying to overlap as best as he could. But when he got on the overlap, he doesn't have a ball. He doesn't. He's not getting to the byline and crossing. He's not getting to the byline at all. It's basically he stops in the middle of the box and tries to play a square ball to whoever's in space or a cutback. So that's okay once or twice, but then that becomes very predictable. If he's not going past you, if he doesn't offer a threat in that regard, then you just set up the block. And, so he is capable of standing in defensively, I think, if needed. But clearly, the gap between him and the likes of Johnson, and no harm to him, but I'd say Ralston as well, it was fairly significant. I think I was far more concerned about our other fullback today. I thought Greg Taylor was really poor for the most part. So, that's a concern. He looked off the pace. So I know it's the first game, and a lot of them should have looked off the pace, but the other boys didn't look off the pace. The other boys looked as if they were at it. I was actually very pleased with the overall sort of energy in their performance at this stage in the season. I thought we looked pretty good from that point of view. So we were competitive. We were in there. We were throwing goals away. As if we were giving presents out at Christmas. It was ridiculous. But the rest of the play, we had good energy. We had some really good play. Obviously, Maeda played an absolute blinder. And he still did his Maeda thing, like snatching it, an unbelievably good chance, and he just snatches at it, basically misses it. And that's the Maeda we all know. But the rest of his play was sensational. So that was a good thing. Hatate was a good thing. The defence was just, it was not good today. There was so many problems there. I do think we have, because we're not just talking about this game. So let's assume, our best defence of last season, and our best defence of last season wasn't good enough at the level that we want to be playing at, trying to step up a level in Europe. And we're nowhere near our best defence from last season at this point. So we have got a lot of work to do, I think, on the defence heading into Europe. And we play the Derby quite early in the season as well, and they're obviously going to target us physically. It's very, very clear that's what they're doing with a team full of hammer throwers. So it's basically it's about us. Our fate is in our own hands. We have the money, we have the resources, we have the scouting capabilities. We know what we're at. And I know there are always issues in the transfer market. I have it from someone who's well placed source from the club. Knows that we'd made an approach for an Arsenal keeper, and the deal was done basically. So they agreed that the boy was too good to be on the bench, and he wanted to come. Celtic wanted to sign him. Then Arsenal started playing silly buggers with the contract and wanted to put basically a buyback clause in the contract for a fixed fee. So we can't do that. I mean, that's a terrible idea anyway, but we can't do that. we're a player trading club. So if we're buying a boy for, X number of millions, there's no way we can say to somebody, I will definitely let you buy him back for, another couple of million and, a few years' time where he could be the best player in the country. So terrible, but that's the kind of thing that happens. So we had to walk away from that deal. That'll be happening all over the place at the moment. There'll be deals we are walking away from. Some of them we'll hear about, some of them we won't. And so essentially, we know, I think, very clearly where we have to strengthen. And if we don't, there's no way that Brendan's looking at that game there today and not seeing where the weaknesses in that team are, as well as the strengths. So it wasn't all bad news, but the bad news seemed to be concentrated in one area, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. No, you're really, you're hitting the spot there, because I think at half time, when you looked at that, we started off and focused on all the positives, and we are going to speak about it for anybody in the comments who are wondering. But that second half was just a capitulation. And you think about that defence, or being in a situation where you've got to play someone in an unfavoured position, i.e. Iwata. You've got to play Kobayashi at centre half. Starfelt and Taylor and Hart don't stand up. If that happens in Europe, you will be absolutely mauled. And it doesn't matter how creative your players are up top or how improved your midfielders are, i.e. I thought O'Reilly played really well today as well as Hatate. It doesn't matter, because if you don't have the back gate locked up, you're not going to win games. Now, Soph comes in to say that, yes, it was Joe Harper who scored the 3 goals. He is today's Maeda. We need to talk about Maeda. We need to talk about that. Corvo in UFC. Newcastle fan Turnbull is going to cook under Rodgers. Well, before today, I made it. It's out there. It's on the blog. I can't change my mind. I thought he was going to leave the club. So we'll see how that goes. It's all about opinions.
I think the one thing you do have to mention, though, Paul, is, and it's fair play, is in terms of conditioning, what a test that must have been. I was sweating just looking at those boys. Was it 28 degrees? I mean, the sweat was lashing off them from the first 25 minutes. I couldn't see hardly. So, let's be clear on how big a test that was. And that was another reason to be really pleased with how we went initially, up till at least just before the 60 minutes and, losing that last... when we still had the decent team on, as it were. So, it's a hell of a test of conditioning at this stage in the season. Will have done us a lot of good, hopefully. But obviously, as you say, it was a capitulation, but it was a new team that came on. So, it was entirely, there was no bedding in. They'll not have played together before like that. They'll have just been thrown on. So I actually thought he might have gone a bit longer even, and just given them, close to 90 minutes, and then played an entirely different team on Saturday. And I think he will play an entirely different team on Saturday. So we'll see how they get on. But I reckon it could be like Welsh and Scales in the centre and, that sort of thing. So we'll see. We'll see where we end up. But 28 degrees, you've got to give the boys credit. They didn't fall off physically until towards the end, when it was, as I say, it was a different set of players.
Yeah, definitely. And 6-4, I'm not sitting here as concerned, and as No-Leg McRaymond has said here, no need to panic. When we got beat 6-2 off West Ham in Ange Postecoglou's first pre-season, I thought we were in deep, deep trouble. I really did. I thought, wow, we are so far off it. And not just that, there's so many players that need to come in to make it right. I don't feel like that. I know that we need to start rebuilding that defence. Patrick, some people might say, listen, that's the best defence in Scotland for 2 years. And it is. The facts will show you that. We've just won 5 out of 6 trophies. It's not all doom and gloom. But the minute you lose a couple, then you start to see the frailties, don't you? And I'm going to bring it up because when we discussed it, I think it was 2 weeks ago, some people in the comments are saying, why are you discussing this? This is just red top nonsense. It's speculation. It's gossip. But last week, Brendan Rodgers was talking about Kieran Tierney. And Kieran Tierney is a different beast of a player than what we have currently. I'm not into short-termism, I've got to say. And I hope we're not in a position, Patrick, where we have no other option than to do something like that and bring in a player on loan. I'd much rather we stuck to our strategy, as John said before, even if it means you close the door on a deal for a player who would have been a good addition to the squad. But it was interesting that Brendan did bring it up, did speak about it, and says never say never.
Yeah, when managers don't entirely rule it out or refuse to comment, you do sort of wonder. Quite often managers won't comment on other teams' players, and usually that means there's next to nothing in it. But the fact that he's willing to comment, maybe it's because he's worked with them before, maybe it's because there's something to it. I don't know, but yeah, he certainly sort of he spoke about it for a good minute or two in the press conference, and it's obviously we know the quality the player has, but it's not one that I'm overly keen on. I'd rather try and sign a player permanently. I mean, you're talking about someone who I think he's 25 or 26. I want to say he's 25. He's got injury problems. He doesn't start. I don't think he's ever started. I'm not sure of the stats, but he certainly didn't start a hell of a lot of games for Arsenal last season. We know he's not going to sign permanently after the year, so already you've got a bit of an issue there. Even if he was to sign permanently, you're talking about a high fee, high wages, 26, 27-year-old. So no matter which way you look at it, it's pretty short term. Obviously, you've got the quality. If he can stay fit, he's a phenomenal player. But, it's a big if. And in a way, it reminds me of Aaron Ramsey 18 months ago. Obviously, Aaron Ramsey's a quality player, but you're shelling out a lot of money for a guy who's he's injured quite a lot. So it is a bit of a lottery for the amount of money that you're paying. So it wouldn't be my first choice, but if we get to 5-6 days before the window shuts and we've still not signed anyone, and Taylor still looks a bit wobbly, then it's probably something I would explore actually, because Taylor is one of these players. I'd put him in the same camp as Ralston and Maeda. Maeda's probably answered the question today of how can these players perform for Celtic without Ange, because they definitely played arguably their only good football for Celtic under Ange. And I sort of feared for Maeda because I thought, he's a very unique player. He does a certain type of job. And when he's not doing that job, he's pretty poor. So I did worry for him. Ralston was quite poor towards the end of the season. Taylor, I thought, dropped off a bit as well. But, if I'd rather we didn't think short term, because I feel as if that's what happened towards the end of Rodgers' first reign, especially in that third season. It was incredible how unorganised we were. But as I say, if it's 5-6 games to go, we want to make progress in Europe. We want to have the best possible team. It's maybe something I would explore.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do agree with that, because I don't want us to be in a situation where we don't have any other options. And I think that, the recruitment that we have seen in the last 2 seasons would suggest that there are going to be plenty of options. It's maybe one of the signings that Rodgers has brought to the table himself, in actual fact, when you think about it, because it's not really going to fit the model of what we've been doing over the last 2 campaigns. Just interestingly, I thought I'd check this while you were talking about him. In his last season at Celtic, Patrick, Kieran Tierney played 3,429 minutes of football, and he has averaged 2,000 minutes of football for Arsenal in the 4 seasons since leaving Celtic. So there have been issues. I was talking to John before the game about just the lack of game time a player like James McCarthy's had since he came to the club. It's been a really expensive error to bring him to Celtic, and he's still got 3 years left on his contract. Now, I get it. I never want to lose 6 goals, no matter what level Celtic are playing. 6 isn't good enough, but I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as it were, because there was lots of good stuff in there as well. Daisen Maeda, since he's come to the club, we've known him as being this player who's like a pocket rocket. He never stops. I don't know what miles he runs per game, but it's probably the most in the Scottish League by a distance. He's unbelievable. The speed, the hard work, that whole thing. And we've always gone on about the fact that there's sometimes a lack of a clinical edge, John. We've seen it against Real Madrid, with the floodlights got in his eyes in the second half. There's been occasions throughout his time at Celtic where you're like, where's that clinical edge? If he could add that to his game, it would take him to another level. Some of us questioned the fact that he was picked for Japan and the unbelievable talents of Kyogo and Hatate were not. But then we've seen a different side to him today, John. We've seen a completely different side to Maeda.
But you have to factor into the conversation that we had space. Do you know what I mean? And what he's great at is finishing off a move, because he will always get in the end of it because he never stops running. Mm-hmm. So he was in the end of all those moves today. The one thing he did that was very impressive and instinctive was try to chip the keeper from 40 yards. That's not a part of his game I've seen before. So that was new. But he was on the end of some good moves, but those moves involved us having space that we rarely have, certainly domestically. So that's why Abada looked good today as well. You give these guys space and they will blow you away. So, you put a ball behind the defence and they will absolutely destroy you. We rarely get the luxury of that domestically. And usually in Europe, we're too busy at the other end of the park to worry about it. But, you do have to factor in the type of game it was and the type of game that we normally play in. So is he the man to finish a move? Yeah, I'd say a lot of the time he would be, despite he's obviously his one squaff. The rest of his game was absolutely tremendous. Mm-hmm. Tremendous. And if he makes one miss-hit in a game, that's grand. If he scores another 3, that'll do. We can live with that. But his it's all been said before, his energy is running, but he was so dynamic there tonight. And I think made a great case to Brendan Rodgers, sort of slightly worryingly that, we don't need another centre-half, because I think we do, but I think the way he's played there tonight might mean Brendan Rodgers is, sort of backs off, because he'll be thinking we have 3 guys in place. So that could be interesting, and whether we continue to pursue that. But if that's the case, then we're desperately short of wingers all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to see what impact that's going to have on Brendan's thought process.
Yeah, all of a sudden, like you say, going from a position where I felt we were well covered in that position, to thinking to yourself, do we need more wingers? By the way, we have been in the market for wingers as well. And, I meant to ask Jared about Tilio when he was on at half-time, because he's a big fan of Tilio and he obviously can play out wide as well. So there's loads of things to be positive about. I'm not getting too concerned about that, but we do need to knuckle down to the positives and the negatives.
Can I ask you a question then? When players that we'd sort of been discussing beforehand, and we discussed them last week, wondering how you both felt about how Haksabanovic did.
Okay, that's a good question, John, because he's a player who I thought that there was a group of players that came in last season and it was all about bedding them in, and this season they could do really well under Brendan Rodgers. And I thought he was one of them. I thought, could be one of the guys. Johnson's already one of those guys. And I thought Iwata was the 4th one. But I did think that Haksabanovic, this is the season for him to shine. And I saw nothing today to suggest that that's going to happen. And that's really disappointing, because he does have the attributes. He does have the ability. Are we playing him in the wrong position? I'm not sure. But I don't see enough at all from Haksabanovic to suggest he's going to be this player that he sometimes promises to be, Patrick. I don't know if you agree with that.
No, I totally agree. I've been quite disappointed with Haksabanovic. I think he was coming on to a game before the World Cup in November. I think he actually won Player of the Month for November in the SPFL.
Yeah. Yep.
I think we only played 2-3 games, but scored a couple of goals. Ever since the World Cup, though, you could say he's not had a run in the team, but any time he's been in the team, he's done next to nothing to impact any of the games. I think he's quite a slow guy for a winger. I don't think he's the quickest. He's got bags of skill, but if you can't go by a player, it doesn't really help you. I think it'd be interesting to see him in the middle of the park. I'm unsure as to why we've not tried that yet, because I think it would suit him more. Obviously, we've got a plethora of midfielders who are all vying for places, but I think that would suit him more because of his lack of pace. I think it is sort of now or never. I know he's only been at the club for a year, but in that year he's not really done much apart from a couple of weeks of form. He's not someone that I'd be shouting about to get into the team. this really is his time to shine. With Jota leaving 2 weeks ago, he seems like the natural successor, but he's done nothing to merit that place. So yeah,
it's annoying, isn't it? It's very annoying.
Yeah.
I think we all wanted to see him do well, and it's really disappointing because just watching him today, there's just too much that he does that doesn't come off, and too many of his better passes are going backwards or sideways. They are not, as they would call them in the game, pack passes and the old stats thing. He's not beating anyone or taking anyone out of the game. He's not taking anyone out of the game with his pace. We've always said that he profiles as a number 10, but we don't play that system, and it doesn't look like we're going to play that system either. And the guys that are already up there, like, your Hatatis and O'Reillys, are far more athletic and offer far more to the team. So unless we, basically don't play a front three, and withdraw the 10 more towards the midfield and we play with a front two, I don't think there's any sign we're going to do that because a lot of our better players are in those positions. But there's just, you can see what he's trying to do a lot of the time, and it's just not happening for him. And there's too much of that. So that's why he doesn't have an impact in the game. And the problem then is he gives us, especially if you're relying on him for games in Europe, if we lose possession in those areas of the field, if we give a possession away cheaply, we will be exposed time and time and time again. You need guys who are they either need to be putting the defence on the back foot so that it's more difficult for them to counter-attack, even if they do lose the ball, or they need to be getting past the defence. But what we can't do is him just playing in front of the defence and running across the defence, which he did a couple of times as well. You see what he's trying to do. He's looking for the opening and all that sort of thing. But again, that can be fairly easy for a decent defence to try and protect against. So there's just, I'm just a bit disappointed, to be honest, because as you say, I mean, I loved the guy when he came in. I thought he was going to be absolutely scorchingly good, and I really hope, because I'm not sure we would get rid of him at this stage. Again, maybe he's got more utility, and Brendan needs that for the squad. But because Brendan will be looking at the same thing, probably thinking this guy's really talented. This guy's tremendously talented, but then you get through a few games, and then it's just like he hasn't done anything. So anyway, it's a bit disappointing. But look, there was other better performances. And as for the Tierney thing, you cursed that immediately there, Patrick, by lining him up with Ramsey. That's him. In my head now, you've just ruined that entire possibility of a transfer. I say, oh my God. What a twin that is to give him.
I know. Listen, like you were saying, John, yeah, there's been positives in there as well, but Haksabanovic, and I'm not just pinpointing players for the sake of it, he was underwhelming today. I think he's become a bit predictable. Robert Ingram brings that up as well. He's become all too predictable. He's lost his invention. Well, hopefully, being coached and mentored by Brendan Rodgers will improve his game. But Celtic have been said to be interested in a player called Ferreira. He's a Brazilian who plays currently for Grêmio. I said earlier wrongly that he plays through the centre. He's more of a winger. He can play left and right. And that's the type of player we can bring in, and it fills a couple of positions. And for me, there's a couple of issues there on both wings. And if you bring somebody in that can play both wings, like Ferreira, then that's what interests me. Somebody who's adaptable. We talked about that lack of versatility and adaptability of some players previously, and they've been sold, John.
If you're telling me his second name is Roche, then I'm absolutely 100% for him.
Over it. We are all over it. The only concern is, I think the last player we signed from Grêmio was a certain Raphael Scheidt. And by the way, there's all these things about the fact we didn't watch him and all that. We relied on videotape. Well, Celtic went out 3 times to Brazil to watch Raphael, and in the Grêmio side was a young kid who was tearing it up, and his name is Ronaldinho, right? And his transfer, I think it was 12 or 18 months later, was less than the money we paid for Raphael. So whoever done the scouting mission, hopefully no longer works for the club. But because I think Ronaldinho did okay, didn't he? Whereas we were left with Raphael.
One of the greatest players to ever play the game. Ronaldinho, it was just sensational, absolutely sensational. But look, positive news, we did get Raphael shite. So it's swings and roundabouts, isn't it?
It's a cautionary tale, indeed. Listen, it wasn't meant to be negative. We did get defeated 6-4, but I'm going to leave you with a positive. And Kenny67 brings them up, and I think you've listed them pretty well, Kenny. Abada and Hatate were very good today. Maeda scores his hat-trick, outstanding first half. He could have had 5 goals, absolutely, but impressed with his all-round play. And yeah, it is important, Kenny, to note that we did give some the young boys a run out as well. Kelly and Summers came on and got some game time. It's important for them because, there has been occasions in the past where Brendan has introduced his own laddie for a runabout in a friendly game. And thankfully, we didn't see any of that today. Listen, guys, sorry it took me about 15 minutes to get you on the stream. I was at that stage where I was looking about for bottles of water and all that because I was talking so much. So thanks for coming and saving me. 12 to 1,300 strong on the live stream. Thanks everybody for getting involved. We really appreciate your support. Give us a thumbs up on the YouTube. Subscribe to the channel if you want to comment. And if you want to come along and see another beer, this time it's Roy Aitken, then the ticket link is underneath this video. A couple of weeks to go. Some tickets available. Really looking forward to Roy Aitken live with the Celtic State of Mind in Glasgow. Gentlemen, next week, there'll be loads more to talk about. There'll be some more games to talk about, and I'm pretty sure a couple of ins and outs to talk about, I mean in a transfer sense. So thank you all for getting involved in the comments section. Thank you to John Hughes and Patrick McGill for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.